This podcast is brought to you by Flipper, a marketplace to buy and sell websites, stores, and digital real estate. Plot your own path. Become a boss by buying a small online business at Flipper. Simply visit flipper.com/techtalks for a free consultation and 50% off fees. That's FLIPPA, flipper.com/techtalks. If you do visit, let me know how you get on. But now, let's get the show started.
Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, and today's guest is CircleCI's Jim Rose, who was last on this podcast 2 years ago and has recently come off a $100 million Series E funding round. But this got me thinking, how much has changed since we last spoke 2 years ago? I mean, isn't it funny that every day feels like Groundhog Day? No changes, every day is the same. And yet, if I look back to 2 years ago and what's changed for me, I can know that this podcast has rebranded to Tech Talks Daily from Tech Blog Writer. And I've had a book, Great TED Talks Innovation, and now I'm also hosting Tech Fusion by Citrix Ready and Switched On Thinking podcast with Netgear. How does all that happen? Maybe the world's speeding up a little. Stop the world, I want to get off. I hear you cry. But before we do, I'm going to beam your ears all the way to California, where Jim is waiting to bring us up to speed with everything that he's been up to and also share his thoughts on the recent acceleration of DevOps and CI/CD. So a massive warm welcome back to the podcast. We last spoke on episode 545 back in June 2018. But for anyone that missed that original chat, can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Jim Rose. I'm the CEO of CircleCI. We are an automation platform for software delivery teams. So we help software delivery teams automate all the repetitive steps that happen between the time a change is made to your software or a change is made to your application. We build it, we test it, we make sure everything is good before shipping it downstream and putting it in the hands of the end user. And I've been doing this now for almost 9 years at this point. It's been quite a decade, and the market is certainly catching up and maturing and becoming a lot more interested in this whole notion of continuous delivery, this whole idea of being able to ship quickly.
You have been on a fantastic journey there at CircleCI, but I'm conscious just to get everyone up to speed with people that are hearing about CircleCI for the first time. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you're helping companies such as Deliveroo, NetGuru, TransferWise, and so many others, and helping them maximize delivery sophistication and developer empowerment? I mean, it sounds a bit of a mouthful, but can you expand on that?
Yeah, for sure. So what we do is, the way to think about it is we're the assembly line for a software delivery team. So all of the steps between the time a developer makes a change in code until that change is actually in the hands of the end user, so many of those are repetitive, and you would benefit from doing it the same way every time. Consistency, deterministic behavior is really important in software delivery so that you can both deliver good applications as well as deliver them quickly. And so that's what we provide for software delivery teams. So they work with companies like GitHub and Atlassian and others to help store their code and work and collaborate on their code. They work with companies like Amazon and Google and IBM and Microsoft to run their applications. And all of those steps in between those 2 points, we help create that pathway and create that road. And, for certain companies, speed is really important. The thing that continuous integration and continuous delivery give to customers is higher quality software as well as faster delivery. And in certain companies, certain markets, speed is incredibly important. The market's moving quickly. You want to be responsive to your end users. You want to be able to create change and put it into the hands of the customer as quickly as possible. And using CI, continuous integration, and continuous delivery systems allow for that to occur because every interaction that would have required someone actually going in manually and checking, testing a change can now be done automatically in fractions of a second versus minutes or hours or days. But the other big interesting part about it is the more you test your software, the better your software becomes, the higher quality and the fewer number of bugs that you actually have in your application. So what we find with customers, you brought up great customers, Deliveroo, NetGuru, and others, is the more they test their application, the better the application becomes, the more performant the application becomes. Because it's just like anything, the more you exercise a muscle, the more you do something, the better you get at it. So what we've seen with customers is customers either come to a platform like CircleCI because they're trying to increase software quality, or they're trying to increase delivery speed. And one of those primary concerns is driving adoption of CircleCI. But in driving increased delivery velocity, you get better quality software. By increasing the quality of your software and automating the tests, you can ship software as quickly as you need to. So you end up getting both sides of the equation.
And since we last spoke, of course, CircleCI is coming off a $100 million Series E funding round. So can you tell me a little bit more about that? And is there anything else that we've missed since our last conversation over the last, 2 years?
Well, it's been busy times. Yeah, so we raised a $100 million round at the beginning of the year. And, we really raised the money because the market itself is maturing. I think there's always a lot of conversations about the world is being eaten by software. Every company is a software company. And more companies are waking up to that reality. They're realizing that their relationship with their customers is being mediated by a screen of some type. And that screen is being driven by software. And in the past, they may not have been paying as close attention to that reality, but now everyone is realizing that becoming a good, high quality, very efficient software delivery team and software delivery company is important. So we've seen the types of companies that work with CircleCI really evolve. So we've started 9 years ago. When we started 9 years ago, this idea of continuous delivery was mostly the purview of really sophisticated venture-backed startups. They were companies that had a lot of technical capabilities, didn't have a lot of infrastructure or legacy systems that they had to manage, and they just needed to move quickly because they were trying to find what their business was. They were trying to find their own product market fit. And over the last 9 years, and especially over the last 2 years, what we've seen is more traditional logos, more traditional companies are now realizing that they're also software delivery companies. And so they're trying to adopt continuous delivery practices. So these are much larger deals, much more recognized logos, but at the same time, they're earlier in their adoption phase. They require more education. They require a lot of assistance to help them and their team get up to speed. And so being able to raise additional capital allows us to create teams and dedicate resources to helping those customers get onto the ramp and continue to grow with us as a platform. So it's an interesting time, certainly with COVID and all the associated lockdowns with COVID. The other big change in the market has been every company has really had to deal with the fact that they're remote and they're remote only. So a lot of software delivery teams have had manual processes or existing systems that, worked well enough. And, if somebody needed to reboot the machine, they were sitting in the office and they could reach underneath their desk and reboot the machine and everything was fine. But now that everyone is remote, you're realizing all of these kind of hiccups in the processes, and companies are now having to deal with that all at once. So there's been a dramatic acceleration in the number of companies that are trying to put in automation and put in continuous delivery systems and processes that, we're taking 1, 2, 3 years of digital transformation and really compressing it down into 3 or 4 months.
And 2020, of course, has been an infamous year for so many reasons. And as lockdowns begin to lift now, can you tell me a bit more about how you're helping businesses accelerate their delivery of value through software? And are you noticing any trends around that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing that we provide for customers is resilience. So over the last 3 or 4 months, customers have recognized the hitches and hiccups in their processes, and they've attempted to straighten them out. And while everyone was remote for a long time, and now they're going back into the office, they want to keep all of those changes that they've put in place and really invest in those changes, regardless of where the software development team is sitting. Because, as you're seeing in the United States, we've had situations where we have been locked down and closed, and then we've reopened, we've had problems, and then we've locked down again. And so for software delivery teams, they want to make sure that they're resilient to that change. So regardless of where the developers are, they always have a consistent platform that they can work with and a consistent set of tools that they can work with, irrespective of where the development team ends up working from. And so that's been a really important, I think, realization for a lot of different companies, is that that's a process and a set of values and mores that all companies are going to have to adopt and are going to want to invest in. I think the other thing that we have found more generally, even before COVID, is that you typically find developers are happier in shops that have well-established DevOps practices. They tend to be a happier set of developers. They tend to be more productive because they're spending their time working on the software and the processes and the applications that make their company and their customers happy and special, versus doing a lot of repetitive tasks. And any repetitive tasks that you can put into an automated system frees up those software developers to work on those higher level, more strategic questions. We talk about internally from our own product and engineering team that we can build anything, but we can't build everything. And as much as possible, if we can take our own internal development efforts and really hone them and sharpen them and focus them on the things that are going to make our customers happy, it's going to make our developers that much happier as well.
And in software engineering, CI/CD generally refers to the combined practices of continuous integration and either continuous delivery or continuous deployment, because it bridges the gaps between development and operation activities teams by ultimately enforcing automation in building, testing, and deployment of applications. So I'm curious, do you have any insights that you can share around the recent acceleration of DevOps and CI/CD?
Well, when COVID happened, so when everything started to lock down at the end of February or March, our expectation was that development activity was going to go down. And in fact, what we saw was that teams accelerated the amount of software that they were building by a good 15, 20, 30, 40%. The market really accelerated as they realized that companies want to make long-term investments in their technical platform, not just for the next 30, 60, 90 days, but they're really trying to make investments that are going to last for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road. And so there's been this increased focus on really trying to shore up the technical underpinnings of a whole bunch of different industries, as well as different companies and different applications. And so that's been an interesting, I would say, counter trend that we didn't really expect. We expected as companies and as countries were locking down that activity would go down, but in fact it's increased. And so that's been a very interesting transition, and we think one that is long lasting. I think the other part too is that what we have found typically with our customers over the last 9 years is that as customers and as software delivery teams build and deploy more frequently, they ultimately accelerate the number of times that they deploy. So we did a research report about 1.5 years ago, and what we found was when customers initially get started on the CircleCI platform, they will typically deploy a new change or a new version of the application about twice a week. But as they become more sophisticated, as they get more and more processes in place, they go from doing it twice a week up to 40 times a week. And, ultimately our very advanced customers are deploying hundreds of times a day and putting those changes into the hands of the customer. And while in the past that has happened over months and quarters and years, you're finding now that all of those cycles are getting compressed, where once you have the automation in place and you know that a change is good, you might as well put it into the hands of the customer, because it's just costing you money by not actually getting it out and understanding whether or not that change is effectively driving your business in a positive manner. And so it's been the same process. It's just been compressed in a ever shortening time frame.
I've had countless emails from listeners over the last few weeks talking about their fears and concerns around job security, while also seeing their interest rates on their savings drop considerably. And as a result, many are beginning to look at how they can invest in their future in an uncertain time. Could digital assets be the answer? Now, you might remember that I spoke to Blake Hutchinson, CEO at Flipper, on episode 1194 about how to buy digital assets and websites. In a nutshell, Flipper is a marketplace that you can buy and sell websites, stores, and digital real estate that are just ready to go. So if you do have dreams of running your own successful online business, or perhaps you're looking to exit your existing online business, my friends at Flipper can help you buy and sell. So if you're interested and want to find out more, please visit flipper.com/techtalks. That's FLIPPA.com/techtalks for a free consultation and also 50% off all fees. But now, back to the interview. And as lockdowns begin to lift and people start returning to the office and all those meetings that are going to be there around lessons learned and what we're going to do differently, how we're going to change, I'm curious, are there any trends or changes that you're seeing at the moment that particularly interest you?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly automation as a rule, I think, is going to become more and more important. And I don't think that is going to go away. I think we've seen that across customers, that once that ball starts rolling downhill, it just accelerates and it gets bigger and bigger. And so that is certainly something that we have kept an eye on, and certainly something that we've seen across our customers for 9 years. And we've been seeing it now over the beginning of this year. I think the other big change has been it's not just the adoption of automation on the delivery side, but it's been the adoption of the cloud. So cloud adoption has accelerated dramatically across a number of different industries and a number of different companies. And as you adopt the cloud and you get access to instantaneous compute, it really opens up the possibilities of what you can actually build. So we've seen the acceleration of really advanced projects like machine learning and artificial intelligence, very advanced microservice architectures. Things that would have taken quarters and years are now really accelerating, because you have developers who have good tooling, good processes in place that are able to move quickly. And now you have access to this enormous bucket of power that in the past they were blocked off from. And that change is proving to be pretty resilient. I think the other big piece has been the number of applications that customers use and end users are using has dramatically accelerated as well. So you look at the number of mobile applications, you look at the number of different online accounts and applications that customers are using, that's exploded as folks are remote, as folks are sheltering. So the opportunity from a customer perspective, the opportunity to create more and better interactions with those customers has really accelerated. And I think we've seen that in our business. We've just seen the types of applications really blossom, as well as the number of applications. And so that's, I think, a pretty exciting, enduring change. And we're doing our best to make sure that customers, can put in the necessary infrastructure and the necessary process to be able to deliver to those sets of customer demands.
And over the last few months, of course, we've seen many businesses struggle. Some have pivoted and even thrived. But what have been your biggest challenges this year, would you say? And how have you tried to turn them into opportunities?
Yeah. Well, before COVID, we were running almost entirely a remote company. So about 60% of our company was fully distributed and fully remote before COVID happened. Of course, now we're 100% remote. And so we had a lot of experience in running a distributed organization with folks that were not in offices. I think the challenges have been that even though we were running a distributed company and folks were working from homes and coffee shops and their own offices and shared office locations, the reality is that their personal environment has changed. They may have kids at home, they may have pets, they may have spouses, they may have extended family members. Their personal environment has changed. And so as a company, we've wanted to make sure that everyone that works for us is in a good place and can deal with changes in their personal life, while at the same time being able to work professionally and work remotely, for CircleCI on a professional basis. And that's been a tough needle to thread. I think the other big part of that too is that we run not only a distributed organization, but we're global. And so we operate across some untold number of countries. I'm not even sure at this point, but we've been running dedicated operations in 6 different locations. And so countries are adopting different policies at different rates right now, and they're opening at different rates. And so trying to balance that, what is happening in Japan versus what is happening in London versus what's happening in Canada or the US is difficult. And everything is running at its own pace. And so we need to be flexible as a company to, really, really be respectful of the local norms, while at the same time making sure that we're thinking about the overall health of our employee base and making sure that everyone ends up in a good place.
And of course, startup life is famously a roller coaster ride, of tremendous highs and tremendous dips. And this year's only going to exacerbate that. But finally, before I let you go, is there any advice that you'd offer to any startup founder listening, especially if they want to make their company attractive for funding?
Well, it's been said that the best companies start during times of crisis. And I think that is true. I mean, I think right now you have an opportunity to really hone your craft, to really get laser focused on what makes your company special and what makes your application so useful and critical for your end users. And so it's both a difficult time, but I think it's great companies are really born from the crucible, and we're in a very difficult time. I would say what we have seen is, and what I think is attractive to investors right now is, in the past, we've all talked about growth. We've all talked about, hockey stick growth, being able to grow incredibly quickly, incredibly fast at very low cost. And I think that those businesses still exist. There are certain industries where they exist. I think DevOps and developer tooling is one of those, but I think we're probably more the exception than the rule. I think the interesting part for a new founder would be you have to really focus on finding the customers that are going to become your champions and your advocates, because investors are smart enough to realize that right now it's a difficult financial time. But if you build something that customers love, eventually the market is going to turn. Eventually things are going to open up and dollars are going to flow through more parts of the economy and more parts of the system. And if you have something that customers really love, they are going to start paying for it when they have the capacity to do that. And so being very focused on the needs of that end user and the value that you're providing to that end user, irrespective of what they're paying you, I think is the key to success right now. Now, hopefully the market turns sometime in the next few months, few weeks, few months. But we'll see. And as long as you're really honed in and laser focused on that core user value and those core champions, I think you'll be in okay shape.
Excellent advice. And I think we've covered a lot of ground today and probably left a few people with even more questions. So for anyone that would like to find out more information about CircleCI or just contact your team and ask those questions, what's the best way of doing that?
You can just go straight to our website. So we're circleci.com. And so it can be hard to spell. So CircleCI.com. And just post it there. You can also find us on Twitter, LinkedIn, GitHub, all your favorite social channels. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out. We're happy to answer them.
Well, there really does seem to be a huge focus on value and efficiency right now. And one of the reasons I was really excited to get you back on today was hearing more about how you're helping businesses accelerate their delivery of value all through software and technology. So a big thank you as always for joining me, but hopefully we won't leave it another 2 years till we get to speak again. But thanks for joining me, Tom.
Yeah, thank you. Be safe.
A big thank you to Jim for sharing how they're helping businesses accelerate their delivery of value through software. And that might be through working with Facebook on their open source machine learning library, PyTorch, or with a non-profit creating low-cost ventilators to help COVID-19 patients in the developing world. And for me, that is what it's all about. It's solving problems for people and businesses with tech at the very heart of it. So the problems come first and then using the tech to solve those problems. Ultimately, you're left with delivering people with value. But hey, I'm just rambling there, aren't I? So I'd love to know your thoughts, insights, expertise, whatever it is. I've got an open door here. So email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. If you'd like to work with me, if you need help with your business blogs or launching your own podcast, go by my website, techblogwriter.co.uk, where you'll also find links to all my social channels and nearly 1,300 tech interviews and nearly 1,300 interviews with tech leaders from all over the world. But if you've been there, done that, and you don't need anything, then just join me here again, same time, same place tomorrow, where I'll have another tech leader lined up for you. So a big thank you for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.